The hummingbird is this beautiful bird that works and it pollinates, and it also has one of the biggest hearts per ratio of its size, so it has a really big heart for its small little body, and that's why it's always flapping, and it's really energetic, and it's always going because it needs to pump blood through, and it needs to eat and get the nectar, and while it gets the nectar is they're pollinating. But I'm here to talk about the Hummingbird Collective.
Police down the street said, hold on your house, your honey, your body will give me money. The grass is looking green in the placenta of your dreams. Let me murder your inhabitants. So taxi, coke and walk in.
My name's Vilo. I'm a part of the National Day Labor Organizing Network. We've been dedicated to Arizona for years because it's an epicenter. It's an epicenter for a laboratory of right-wing policies that are taking our country in the wrong direction. And it's an epicenter for human rights struggles, developing models and movements that are turning the tide from hate to human rights. Change happens when people who are impacted by oppression see themselves as actors. When those who are targeted by policies like SB 1070 stand up and challenge that system falls apart. So those are the groups and those are the individuals that we all need to be supporting as individuals, as organizers, as funders. Our job is to be in solidarity with frontline communities, standing up themselves, defending their rights, and expanding the rights for all of us.
What's really revolutionary about the Hummingbird Collective is actually this really simple thing, which is it's a project that's based on the idea that people with the money shouldn't necessarily be the people making decisions about where money goes and how money is spent, but it's people doing the organizing work and people who are part of it, communities most impacted by the system of migrant injustice that we live under, and people who are doing that work who should be making the decisions about where money goes and how money is spent.
In the spring of 2010, the Hummingbird Collective came on a delegation to Arizona to see the human rights crisis on the ground in the aftermath of SB 1070, as well as the grassroots organizing for migrant and border justice taking place throughout the state.
Didn't know he had all those women on a string and those boys downtown. Didn't know they were his ring, come to think of it. Remember Mexico 10 years or so ago, we used to walk around.
Through coming together in the retreat, that room of people also started to make decisions about how to move the money that has been committed to the Hummingbird Collective Fund towards the work of migrant justice in Arizona. And I think the really, really magical, powerful thing that happened during that day is slowly language started to shift, so the Hummingbird Collective became all of us, and not just the folks with class privilege coming in and initiating this conversation.
Really, this group of over 20 people is like making decisions by almost consensus about like really big things, like how grants are decided and the shape of the funding structure. And I think a lot of that is like proof that we've actually put a lot of work into this process.
What Hummingbird Collective means to me is really changing the way that work gets done and increasing capacity for organizations to do what it is that they do, and also building meaningful strategic partnerships, allies, and community. Part of what these funders are trying to do and commit themselves to is truth and justice and breaking down the walls, breaking down the silos.
The Hummingbird Collective is doing a lot of really groundbreaking, really awesome, incredible, beautiful, groundbreaking work. And this work really is the foundation of saying, how do you build relationships? And through these relationships, how do you build movement? And through this relationship building and this movement building, then how do you turn some of the traditional models that haven't worked before? How do you turn that on its head, and how do you say, how do we make this community and grassroots space, and how do you make this with the family feel, and how do you make this a space where you can start to build together, and you could also replicate, and you could also pollinate, maybe in other spaces, in other states, in other countries, where we can bring together resources for folks that are doing work on the ground and really start putting more of those resources into the community.
What Hummingbird means to us, it's having a funding group that has faith in the work that we do and lets us continue the work that we do, which is fully accountable to the communities.
I belong to La Coalición de Derechos Humanos. started doing immigrant rights work when I was in my 20s in 1976. So this is long time work, and so to meet people like those involved in the Hummingbird Collective and then to be invited to be a part of this has really been extraordinary. Even though we've had lots of experience with a lot of supporters and not so much with funders and foundations, you know, this really is different. It feels so dramatically different from anything else we've ever dealt with in terms of having a connection with people who may be interested in, you know, investing some money. I feel like we can really become a family.
We're building our own model, and this model is going to be from the ground up, and we've been building it, and we look forward to really showing you what that's going to look like in the future.
Carrying no guilt, governmental policy, police down the streets, and hold on your house, your honey, your body will give me money. The grass is looking green in the placenta of your dreams. Let me murder your inhabitants. So Texaco can walk in.